Welcome to Musings of a Super Doer with host Christina Kendall. Over the next hour, you will learn what keeps Christina and her guests busy with all their day-to-day life tasks. Now, here's Christina.
Hi there. Welcome to Musings of a Super Doer. I'm your host and resident super doer, Chris Kendall. I'm so glad you're all joining us today. In this episode, and really in all episodes, I'm going to share some random musings about what's going on in my world and maybe what's going on in your world too. So today we are welcoming a very special guest, author Thomas M. Sterner. He'll be talking about his book with us. And then I'm going to also share some random musings about my air fryer and maybe a few other musings if we have time. So we'll just go ahead and get started here. So again, I'd like to welcome Thomas M. Sterner, author of the book, It's Just a Thought, Emotional Freedom from Deliberate Thinking. And this offers it's a practical guide for mastering our thoughts and rewriting our internal programming. Sounds amazing, and I can't wait to hear more about it. So, Tom, welcome.
Thanks, Chris. It's great to be here.
So, emotional freedom from deliberate thinking. Just right off the bat, it seems like such a counterintuitive way. Like it seems like you would want to be deliberately thinking. So what does that mean?
Well, yes, we do want to be deliberately thinking, but unfortunately, we are not. The way that we work, which is what neuroscience has found, is that our subconscious, which is a very elegant recording system, but it doesn't think and it doesn't have a sense of humor, is always watching what is going on in our life and how we're reacting to it. And the language of the subconscious is feelings. So it really pays more attention to the feelings than the words. So in other words, when a situation happens in front of your eyes or something you hear, the subconscious pays attention to how does that make you feel? And that's what it records. So it records your reaction to situations. And it's, in many ways, we need this. You don't have to teach yourself not to touch a hot stove twice. The subconscious is paying attention. It's a protection device. But unfortunately, what it does is it looks at behavior. It actually creates habitual behaviors because it looks at your reaction to situations that are repeated. And when it sees a behavior that you do that is repeated in a certain situation, like somebody comes in a room and says, your hair looks funny today, you have a reaction to that. And usually it's unintentional, but you still have it. And the subconscious watches that. And then because a situation like that will happen several times a day, it looks at that and says, when this type of a situation happens, this is the emotion they feel. So this must be the emotion they want to feel when this particular scenario happens. And then it records it. And then when something similar or exactly like that happens again, it basically just goes and gets that file on the hard drive and executes it. And you are in that experience. You're in the emotional content of that experience. And you're really not in control, and you've been doing it your whole life, and it happens in microseconds, and so it feels like you are actually doing it, but you're actually just in a program basically, and you're being played. So I tell people, most of us spend our days being thought rather than actually being the thinker of the thought. The thinker of the thought is the observer of that scenario. And the observer is the one who has the ability, once they're outside of that cycle, to be able to say, this reaction isn't this interesting. I'm not comfortable in this situation. And this is how I've told myself to behave and what I've told myself to experience in this situation. So I think I'm going to rewrite that. But you have to get to the point where you're outside of it. And that's the trick. And to be able to stay outside of it. But, we need to realize that we are not our thoughts. We have thoughts all day long, something like 60,000. It's incredible. And those thoughts are not deliberate. When I say deliberate, I mean that you decide that I'm the gatekeeper. I'm going to have this thought. I'm going to allow this thought to come through. and I'm going to allow my body and my mind to react to this thought. But most people don't do that. They're basically just a puppet of the whole system, and it flows effortlessly because we've been doing it since we were born, and no one has ever pointed it out to us. And so now through neuroscience, we actually know it's about 95% of the day we spend in this mode of operation. And I think it's a wonderful time, because now that we know that, we actually have the privilege of choice, and we can start working on changing that. And it's very important that we do, because we also know that our thought energy, what we think and how our emotions, through heart math, which is, we know now, we can talk about heart math more, but we know that energetically we are putting this electromagnetic energy out into the world, and it's going into other people, and theirs is going into us. And so we need to become much more aware of what we're thinking, what thoughts we're creating, and how they're impacting not only us, but everybody else.
Wow. Okay. I can't believe you mentioned heart math. My kids' elementary school, they went to a private school, and that they talked about heart math. My older son was a bit of a problem child. He was a little bit on the wild side and was often in trouble for, being a little bit obnoxious or whatever, fidgety. And the principal was always taking him, and they would do heart math and try to figure out how he could get past it. So, and he was probably 8 or 9 at the time. So is this something that you can start at any age, even?
Yeah, as far as I'm
young?
concerned, yes, heart math is, they're about 3.5 decades into the research. And just to talk about it briefly, the neurocardiologist some time ago, I'm taking a guess here, but I'm thinking probably late 90s, early 2000s, discovered that the heart, it is not just this 2-pound beating muscle. It actually has a brain, has its own nervous system, has memory, and the heart actually does more thinking than the brain does. The brain really monitors things like blood pressure, releasing hormones, but it depends on the heart to tell it what to do. So there's this dialogue that's going back and forth between the heart and the brain, but the heart does most of the talking. I think it's over 75 to 80% of the talking and the communication. Now, what's further about this that's so interesting, which is what I just alluded to, is that the heart creates an electromagnetic field, and that field extends outside of our body, and that field has data in it. And that data is information about us. And it's really very truthful information, meaning it's our concept of ourselves, how we're feeling, whether we're confident, whether we're sad, whether we really like somebody. All these sort of things are there, but they're invisible. But the data is there. And the example they give is, if you can look at your smartphone, your smartphone puts an electromagnetic wave out, and that wave carries information. That it carries your phone conversation that you're having, or pictures you're sending, or texting that you're sending. And our heart is doing the same thing. It is putting this information out. That's why I'm saying that our thinking is creating feelings, and those feelings are going out and they're impacting the whole world. But our neurosystem is designed to receive that information too. So there's actually conversations going on between our hearts. And this is just this technology that's just so amazing. This is the problem. This information has been known in some of the Eastern traditions for thousands of years, but we operate in the West, we operate off what I'll call empirical science. And empirical science many times is behind because it needs the instrumentation to prove the data. So
right.
for example,
get that evidence.
Right. So if you can't prove there's a bacteria until you invent a microscope, but we are at this place now with our information and our heart's information that we can actually see this. We can actually plot it. We can see it. And so we know it's real. So as people in our culture, we can invest in it without feeling like we're going to be made a fool of. But what I think is so fascinating about this is that what they're seeing is that the words that come out of your mouth can be anything, but the heart doesn't lie. And that's the reason why, you follow your heart. What does your heart tell you? All these things that have been around for thousands of years have been the truth. But in conversations and in certain situations, you can actually you can confuse people because they're standing there and their heart is talking to your heart, and there's this dialogue going on, but their words don't match up with the data that their heart is putting out, because you can say anything. Like somebody could say, somebody could really like you, but they don't want you to know that they like you, so their heart is putting that information out, and you can say like, I think you like me, and they go, I don't know where you're getting that idea, but well, they're getting it from your heart because your heart is telling them the truth. So I think that this is a really exciting technology, and it's and we're learning so much about it. This also has to do with the way that the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, because they all work, these things, they work on feelings. Everything is about feelings. That is really, in consciousness studies, in science, the science of consciousness, the language is feelings. And I tell people when I work with them, when you're confused about something, stop thinking so much. Try to close your eyes, stop thinking, and reach out to your feeling. Think of your heart. What am I feeling? And it's a faculty. It's a faculty that people don't use, but when they begin to use it, it not only their acuity with it becomes stronger and stronger, to the point where many times the heart won't wait for them to ask it. It'll just give them the information, and they will just have this intuitive thought all of a sudden that will tell them about a situation and what's really going on. And so it's a really exciting time, but like I said, we have to take responsibility for this, because now we know that you fill people with a bunch of fear, and that fear is going out, and it's impacting everybody's immune system. And there's we are all connected, and we're operating as a group, and we need to pay attention to that.
Wow. Okay. So thinking with your heart is a real thing. So I'm also an author, but I do like these cheesy romance novels. And, in that kind of a sense, in the lovey sense, it's always like heart, my heart's telling me this, or I know deep in my heart that this was meant to be, or, whatever. And even as I'm writing it or reading it, I think like, okay, well, obviously that's just a metaphor that Hallmark has come up with the pretty little heart, whatever. But it seems like maybe it came from somewhere.
It's actually true. It's actually true.
Wow.
And I think it's, like I said, when you begin to operate from the perspective that you're thinking from your heart, then because the brain is more like it's like a computer. You're no more in that brain as you are in your laptop. Right. The brain is a computer that you use, your consciousness, your whatever you want to call it, you use, and you're not in the brain. There's like the study that Wilder Penfield did when he was working with his colleagues to map the different areas of the brain. And there's a really interesting story about that, where the brain doesn't feel pain, so they can stimulate different areas of the brain, and which is what they were doing to find out what areas of the brain did what. And so he had this patient where he stimulates part of his brain. He says, I'm going to make you lift your left arm. I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but it's the story. He says, I'm going to make you lift your left arm. So he puts this probe into the patient, and the patient's arm goes up, and then he asked the patient, are you lifting your arm? And the patient says, no, I'm not lifting my arm. You're sticking something in my brain. It's making me lift my arm. And he said, well, can you make your arm do something different? And he's there, yeah, I can. So he moves his arm, back and forth. And then it was like, all right, well, I'm going to stick it in and make you raise your right arm. Can you make your right arm not go up? And he said, yeah, I can do that. And so he stimulates the brain to tell the arm to go up, and it doesn't go up. So the point was that where's the commander? Because the commander is not in the brain. The commander is outside, because it's in the heart. The consciousness is in the heart, and the consciousness can override the brain. Is more or less just this computer that executes commands, but the commander, which is you, can actually override that through your consciousness. So that all this stuff is coming out, and we're really getting this completely different perspective of who are we really, and how do we really get in touch with ourselves? And I think it's, like I said, it's very empowering, because, we're learning through epigenetics and all these other things that the direct impact that the mind has on the immune system. And, when you have a thought, your blood chemistry changes just like that. And the hormones are released and everything. And so you can have like a fearful thought. You can have a happy thought. All these things are changing what your body is being exposed to. And that's why it's so important to pay attention to what are you exposing yourself to? Like if you're exposing yourself to a lot of movies that have this gratuitous violence over and over again, your blood chemistry is constantly changing. It's not differentiating that, as you might think, from being real, because the brain is just watching this stuff and it has an impact, and it really isn't good for you. And so, like I said, I think we're becoming just a lot more conscious of what we think, what is it's doing to ourselves, and if is what it's doing what we want it to do, like because we do have a choice.
Yeah. So I'm fairly emotional and passionate, and I get all excited about things, whatever. But for somebody who's like very analytical, is it hard for them to adopt this like think with your heart, or, intentionally deliberate thinking versus like letting their brain tell them, this is how it's been in the past. This is, I don't know, whatever. It seems like if you are very analytical, it might be more difficult.
Well, I think, analytical people, I think I'm pretty analytical, but analytical people, if you give them, A plus B equals C, they get that. And so it's like I've told people, look, this is a technology that we're talking about here. It's a mental technology. You can use it, or you can get beat by the people that are using it, because you're going to fall behind. So an example of that is and I've given this example many times, but I had an executive client one time, and we were having this conversation, and he said, well, I don't really buy that. I think that I'm creating my thoughts all the time, and I'm in control, and, I'm the cognitive, thinker and everything. And to make a point with him, when he finished, I'm looking in the camera at him, and I said, did I tell you to talk? You need to shut up and sit there until I tell you to talk. And as soon as I did that, he went, and I said, you see, you didn't decide to have that reaction. I said, I manipulated you. I said, all I had to do was give your subconscious a scenario that over your lifetime, it said, what do we do when somebody talks to us this way, when this is the tone of voice that they're having? What is the reaction that we're supposed to have? And they fired that file off. It played it, and I just played you. And he was like, thank you for the awakening. He's like, he said, because I really did not have any control over that. And I said, well, if I had asked you, if you could have reacted that way, any way you wanted, that most likely wouldn't have been the reaction that you wanted. You probably would have not wanted to surrender your inner peace or your self-control to me. But right. You did. And I said, this is why this is so important, is to become much more aware of, I tell people, I'm not my thoughts. I have thoughts all day long, most of which I don't personally create. There are reactions and behaviors that are played out, and I'm in them. So in those moments, I am not in control. I have surrendered control to a behavior that I have installed at some point. But I want to be in control. I want to be the one who decides what thought I will have, because I want thoughts that make me productive, thoughts that make me the person I want to be. And you can do that. You can learn to do that.
Okay. All right. I feel like now I'm going to have to be more consciously, thinking about my reactions to stuff. But is that something that, just from reading your book, I'll be able to make that change, or is it a long training process?
It is. In the book I talk about, in my second book, Fully Engaged, I talk about thought awareness training. And thought awareness training is very simple. But we need to know the purpose of thought awareness training, which is really just my version of a simple 10-minute meditation that you do. The purpose of that is to teach you to be aware of what your mind is doing without your permission, because it's doing stuff without your permission all day. And in order to change, to be in control of the programming, you have to be the orchestrator of it. And most people are not. They're just basically being played all day long. So to get out of that prison, you have to be able to be the observer of the thought. And it's just a shift in perspective. And to know what that feels like, you have to have a practice, that you do. And when you do that practice, it doesn't take very long, 10 minutes a day. After a week or two, you start to, it's kind of funny because you can't stop it from happening. So, like, well, how do I make it happen? You don't have to make it. It just happens. Like, and what, you just, like, I did a thing one time with high schoolers and I told them, I'm going to put a 2-minute timer on and I want you to stop thinking. Just close your eyes and stop thinking. Well, I knew they couldn't do it. But they didn't know they couldn't do it. And so at the end of the 2 minutes, I mean, they were just, it was an epiphany. They're just yakking away like I couldn't do it. And I kept telling my mind to stop thinking. And I said, that's right. And if you are willing your mind, you're using your will and you're telling your mind, stop thinking. And it's saying, nah, I'm going to think anyway, because that's what I do. Like, then who's in control? Because it isn't you. And this was such an epiphany for these kids because they didn't realize how little control they actually had, and that they were not their mind. Their mind was just doing its own thing, and they were just going along for the ride. And it really spurred an interest in them to pursue this thought awareness training and to do it more. And I got, calls from the parents saying like their academics had changed. I mean, all these different things because they had this little tiny taste of what does it feel like when your mind isn't in control all the time? Like when they didn't have to we're not trying to get a perfectly still mind because you're not going to. But what they experienced was less thinking. And when their thoughts thinned out, it was a really pleasant place to be. And so they wanted more of it. And so, it was very successful. But my point is that everybody needs to do this. It's funny because, people like many times when you try to get people to do this for 10 minutes a day, they're like, I'm really busy. Well, you need to clear your schedule. If you can't find 10 minutes to sit, stop reading your text for 10 minutes. Like, I mean, we fill our days with so much overstimulation. It's the reason why our attention span is so short, because we just keep stuffing more data into our mind to process at higher speeds. And the brain is trying to keep up with it. The mind's trying to keep up with it. If you compare that to say 100 years ago, where you would get on a horse to go to town 15 miles away, and all you did was sit there just kind of cloppity, cloppity, clop, for several hours in nature with no stimulus, and so the mind was like in a completely different place than it is today, where it's just constant visuals and media and sounds, they're just all going in there and your mind has to process all that. We really need to spend some time during the day to reverse that so that we don't lose our ability to focus our mind, because that's what's happening.
Wow. Okay. That's incentive enough, I think, to want to read the book and learn more about this. That's interesting. So it sounds like, you're using this technique to help people change their lives and improve things. What about like the super negative people? Are they just, like drawing on bad past experiences and letting that take their whole life? Or are they choosing to just find the negative in everything? Like, how does it help them, or what is the thing going on?
Well, negative behavior is just that. It's negative behavior. And that behavior is what, a negative reaction is what they have told themselves to have. Just because the system is working all the time, just because you don't know it exists doesn't mean it's not working, so it's always watching, it's always recording, and it's taking everything you give it as the truth. It thinks it's the truth, and it thinks it's what you want. So it just gives you back what you tell it. And like I said, the programming that we've done is almost all of it is unintentional. Because if we had a choice, we wouldn't have told ourselves to react a certain way in a certain situation. We just didn't know that we were doing that. And that's the waking up, of like, look, you do have control over this. You can rewrite these programs. So when you talk about someone who's really negative, that's someone who has, through whatever stimulus in their, in their life, maybe their parents were hard on them, maybe they had a lot of friction at home, who knows what, but they learned that this is how you react. They watched other people react this way to situations. I've seen people that, they're raised by someone who is very OCD about money and is, is always afraid to spend money and everything. And they grow up and they repeat that, they repeat this behavior. And they didn't want to, but that's what they observed. So they just basically mimicked that model, and now it's inside of them.
Yeah.
But just because it's inside of them, you can just erase the file and create another file. If you intentionally and deliberately create another reaction, then the subconscious will store that, and then that will be your reaction. You have to take control. But in order to have that control, you that's the trick, is you have to get to become the observer. You have to get outside of that cycle so you can see that this is how I'm reacting. This is not how I want to react, but I'm noticing. I'm the noticer of the thought. I am not my thoughts. I'm the one that watches the thoughts, and some thoughts I create, and I need to start creating thoughts that are going to make me feel happy, more in control, more of the person that I want to be, in certain situations, because the situations are just the situations. In other words, there's a chapter and it's called Interpretation Creates Your Experience. Something happens, and then we interpret whatever that is that's out in front of us. And that interpretation comes from how have we interpreted a similar situation or this situation the last 300 times? And that interpretation is going to create our experience of the circumstance. And that experience is going to determine how we perform in it. So if normally when this particular thing happens, it pushes a button, we get angry, and then we fire off. Well, there you go. Your interpretation was this. So your experience was to get angry, and your performance in the situation, which you may wish that you were in control of yourself, you're not going to be in control of yourself, and you're going to execute this performance, which is you getting mad at somebody, none of which you're in control of. You're just basically a puppet of the situation. And, this is used, this stuff is used in sports like golf, you can't do it on a pro level because they're too smart for it. But, on an amateur situation, I've done things where when I used to play a lot of tournament type golf, the story I've told was I was playing one time with two people I didn't know, a high school kid and this guy that was my age. And the guy that was my age had never played the course, but he was really overconfident, kind of condescending, and I would say conceited. And but I didn't know him, and we were just playing. The three of us were playing, but he kept trying to instruct the high school kid who just wanted to play. And so at one point that we're walking down the fairway, and the kid said to me, he said, "I wish he would just leave me alone." I said, he's all over me, and telling me do this, do that, do that. He goes, "I just want to play." And I said, "Well, we could take him out of the game." And he said, "We can." I said, "Oh yeah." I said, "Well, when somebody's like him," I said, "they're an easy mark." And so I said, "Look, this isn't nice what I'm going to do here." I said, "But I know it's going to work." So on the next hole, this guy very confidently says to me, "Where's the A position?" Because he wanted to impress me with his ability to hit it exactly where I told him. And at that time in my life, and not there now, but I was playing a pretty high level of golf. And so I said, "I'll show you." So I hit my drive right down where I said, "There's your A position." I said, "Now look, whatever you do, don't go right." I said, "If you go right on this hole, I'm telling you, it's jail. You're looking at least a double bogey." I said, "You won't get out of those trees. I've been there. Make sure you don't hit it to the right." And basically I just fed him this image. And I knew that because of his ego, he was going to tell his subconscious, "I don't want this guy to have the pleasure of seeing me hit this ball to the right. So don't," and he would have to, in order for him to do that, he'd have to have a picture in his head of the ball going to the right and a feeling of the ball going to the right. And his subconscious would say, he wants to hit the ball to the right. And that's exactly what he did. And the ball went to the right. And then I told the kid, I said, "We're not done with them." So I just said, "I'll help you find your ball." Well, he was mad, and he said, "No, I can do it." I said, "Oh, no, it's bad over there. I'll help you find." So when we got to his ball, I said, "Now look, I've been here." I said, "What you got to do is take your medicine, just chip the ball out onto the fairway." I said, "You could still get to the green in 3, and it's a par 4. You could still par the hole." I said, "But if you try a hero shot here," I said, "I'm telling you, you're going to hit a tree. The ball is going to go back past you. You're going to be farther into the woods." And he just could not resist that. He just wanted to prove me wrong. And that's exactly what he did. He hit the ball, it hit a tree, went past him. And I thought, "You're done. You're done for the rest of the day." And so when he got out of there, he never got his swing back, and he quit after 9 holes. So my point is that the mind, it just obeys. It doesn't think. If if it was a thinking, if the subconscious mind was a thinking mind, it would say, I know what this guy's doing, and we're not going to play the game. But it doesn't do that. It just watches the images and the feelings and says, go get it. And so that's why I say, we're either the master of the situation or we're the slave of it. We have to learn that is a possibility. And then it's just a matter of practicing mechanics.
Wow. So you can really use this for good or evil. Okay.
You can, well, as I said, you can't do that to a pro because they're like, don't even waste my time with that nonsense.
Right.
They know it. But it's important that you know this because it's happening all around you all day long. That's how marketing works. Marketing works based on making everybody feel incomplete. You can't be happy because you're incomplete. You need this car. I mean, the car companies want us to buy a new car every year. It's just ridiculous, but it's like, if you have this, that feeling you have inside of being incomplete will go away. If you just make another 20 grand a year, if you're just married to somebody that looks like this, if you have this car, if your house, it just goes on and on and on. It's all about making us feel like we can't be happy in this moment doing what we are right now. We have to get over there because that's where happiness is. It's outside of us. It's over there. And when we get over there, that feeling's going to go away. But it never goes away because we just go to the next thing. So, but like I said, we're really beginning to understand habitual thinking, and habitual thinking is good when it's serving us, but when it's causing us pain and suffering, it's got to go.
Wow. So you sound very smart, like you've been doing this for a little while. Tell me about yourself. How did you get here? What brought you to this point?
Well, I am a very inquisitive person. I was always, growing up, and I started out when I was young being very creative, playing several musical instruments, and, had parents that were very creative and very multi-talented. But I was very undisciplined. And fortunately, for whatever reason, I was very observer oriented, meaning that just naturally, I knew I wasn't my thoughts. And so I was observing these behaviors, even in middle school and through high school. I saw myself picking goals that I really wanted to do and starting on them and then burning up the initial enthusiasm and then just letting it go. And I wasn't completing the goals that I had chosen. And it really bothered me because I felt it impacted my self-confidence because I felt like I didn't see my goals through and I wasn't accomplishing what I wanted to accomplish. And I knew by the time I was a senior in high school, I knew I had to do something. I didn't have the faintest idea what to do, but I was aware that I cannot continue my life in this practice. When I got into college, I was given a book, which was Philosophies of the World by a really close buddy of mine, and he had taken the course, so he gave me the textbook to it. And I'd never been exposed to, any of that. And I started reading it, and it covered both Western and Eastern religions. And I got involved in that, and I read through all these things. And the whole concept of Zen mind and detachment from the goal and being very process oriented, present moment oriented, for whatever reason, it just really hit me like this is the answer. And I started going down that path, and it completely changed me. By the time I was in my early 20s, people were telling me I was the most disciplined person they'd ever met. I used to laugh because I didn't realize how much I'd changed, but then I just couldn't stop reading about this stuff. I just wanted more and more and more because I was so much happier. And I started investigating sports psychology, and then that went into neuroscience, and I just kept going, and I've continued to go. I just can't get enough of it. I research this stuff for several hours every day. I want to know what the latest is, and I take notes. And then I take walks and I think about this stuff. And plus I'm working with people. I work with a corporation with everybody from the CEO down to the lowest employee. And I work with private people. And so I'm having to think about this and talk about it and how to communicate it to them and apply it to their life. So I get a lot of reps, in terms of, working with this stuff. And so, and I love it. I absolutely love it because it does. I see these people, they get so excited. and it completely transforms them. I get letters from people from all over the world, and they're like, this stuff is amazing. And I just think it's a really exciting time.
Yeah. Wow, I agree. That is really exciting. I love that you call it mental technology because I mean, we're so reliant on, you know, external electronic technology in our lives, and like, we can't wake up in the morning without our phone telling us what time to do it. And so, taking back some of that control and owning it, like you said, and really like accepting that we have some of that power, and we can control our thoughts. I like that way of thinking about it. So that's exciting. All right. And so are you taking coaching clients if somebody wants to work directly with you?
People can go on tomsterner.com and they can sign up, give them a half an hour for free just to start. We talk about, I usually like, so where are you at? Like, where are you at with what you're trying to do? What do you notice about yourself? And I'm not a coach that believes in long engagements. I don't think this stuff is that complicated. So in other words, when people sign up with me, I'm not expecting them to be working with me for 6 months. I think this is just my own personal feelings, but to accomplish what we're talking about here, you have to learn the mechanics, and you need somebody to be observing how you're applying them, because what people do is they fall back into patterns, and it takes them a while to basically reprocess how they view life and how they view circumstances, because they don't realize, like, they'll do something and you'll say, now, do you see what you just told your subconscious to do? I said, because that's kind of the trick, is to learn to be aware of what are you actually telling your subconscious. So here's a perfect example. I had I was working with college golfers, and one of the kids said, let me give you a scenario. I'm winning this tournament. I'm winning by 1 stroke. And I'll just tell the short version of it. And he said, so I have an opportunity to maybe I'm on the 18th hole. I can maybe pick up another stroke so I could have a 2-stroke cushion to win the tournament, but I'm going to have to hit the ball over water. And that's a risk, because if the ball goes in the water, I'm going to lose the stroke. And now I'm not going to be winning the tournament. I'm going to be at least tying. I might even fall a stroke behind. He said, now I could also play out to the fairway to the left and take the risk out of it. He said, so should I take the risk? And I said, listen to what you just said. I said, what you just said was, if I said, yeah, take the risk, I said, you're going to tell your subconscious, without even knowing it, go get me the swing mechanics I execute when I feel like I'm taking a risk. I said, that's the last thing you want. I said, you should say, this is such a no-brainer shot. I can't believe how easy it is. And make your subconscious go get those mechanics. But that's what I'm talking about. Like, he was completely unaware that his language, he was feeling this is risky. His interpretation of the circumstance was this is risky. So his experience was this is risky. So his subconscious was going to dutifully go get him the body mechanics, the nervousness, the muscle mechanics, and the neuro execution that he gives when he feels nervous and he feels like he's taking a risk. And I said, like, if I put you out in the fairway, say this distance, I said, you're talking about 100, let's just say 155-yard shot. I said, well, what is your yardage with that? And he said, well, that'd probably be like an 8-iron. I said, okay. I said, if you were in the middle of the fairway, no sand traps to deal with, I said, just the green. I said, how would you feel about that? And he goes, oh, it's a no-brainer. I can hit them all day. I said, that's what you want. That's the feeling you want. That's what you want to be telling yourself. I said, you just told yourself, this is problematic. I might screw it up. It may cost me to lose the tournament. I said, that's exactly what you don't want. But your subconscious isn't going to say, I know he doesn't want this. So we just won't give it to him. That's right. It's just going to say, go get it. Just go get him that swing. And this is where, when you work with people and they're trying to change the way they interpret situations where they struggle initially, they have to learn to rethink how their subconscious is going to experience what they're saying to it. And so that's really it. But I don't feel like it takes, months and months and months to do that. So I find people basically, it's a pay as you go. So I don't believe in saying, yeah, you got to give me, you got to buy a $5,000 package or something like that.
Right.
We work, and Some people get to where they want to be pretty quickly. It might be like 3 to 5 sessions. And some people will stay a little bit longer. And then some people will just come back once a quarter, like, just to kind of refresh themselves. But that's how I work.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I'm going to send at least one person your way. I have a friend who's just so overwhelmed with life and so much going on. And I know she just needs to change her thinking. And I think that you could probably change her life in a handful of sessions. So that's super exciting. Okay. All right. Well, I know that you have a lot of things going on, so I'm gonna let you get back to your day, but I'm super excited to have met you. I love all the things that you're doing, and I didn't get a chance to read the whole book prior to this conversation, but I'm anxious to finish it. Do you have an audiobook?
I will produce the audio. All of my other 2 books are in audio format. The Practicing Mind is on Audible. I'm not sure what's going on with them with Fully Engaged, because they bought all the files from me for Fully Engaged, but from what I've heard, they haven't put it up yet.
Okay.
But because I have a background, an extensive background as a recording engineer and a recording studio, I will produce. It's just a thought, and then it will be available, because a lot of people would prefer to listen to a book than to read it.
Yeah,
But my books they're not dense and they're not long, so they're very easy to read. Because if I pick up a book and the type is too small and it's too many pages, I won't read it. That's one of the strong. I hear that over and over again. I love your books because they're short and they say a lot in a very simple way, and so they're very quick to read.
Good. Okay. Excellent. Yeah. I usually will get the audiobook of like self-help type of thing so that I can listen to it and it sort of sinks in better when someone's telling it to me. But I can't wait. So I'm going to just finish reading the book. But thank you so much. And where can people buy it? Where do you recommend people buy it from?
Well, Amazon is the easiest place. Most people go there, but it should be available in Barnes and Noble, brick and mortar stores. And as time goes on, because it was just released in February, it might take a little bit of time to get in airport bookstores and stuff like that, but it eventually will. It takes a while to get this distribution like that.
Yep. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm super excited, and this was some fascinating musings over here. So can't wait to send more people your way.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Welcome back to Musings of a Super Doer with your host, Christina Kendall. Have a question for Christina or her guests? Join us on the show at 866-472-5788. That's 866-472-5788. Now, back to the show.
Hey, friends. If you're just joining us, I'm Chris Kendall, host of Musings of a Super Doer. Before the break, we were talking with author Thomas M. Sterner about his fascinating book, and now we're going to be talking about something not quite as fascinating to maybe everybody else, but to me, it's newly discovered, and that's my air fryer. Okay, now I know people have been using air fryer. Well, they've probably been using them for a long time, but many years, right? These are not brand new to the market or anything. And 2 years ago, so not last Christmas that we just had, 2 Christmases ago, which was already late to the game. My friends had air fryers for a year at that point. But 2 Christmases ago, I asked my husband to get me I needed a new toaster oven, and I wanted the one specifically with an air fryer because I was going to start air frying things. I'd seen the infomercials. I'd heard people talking about it. I wanted an air fryer. Okay. So I got it. I plugged it in. We use it as a toaster oven. For 2 years, it's been great. About 2 weeks ago, one of my friends and we were out on a run, and she mentioned that she was making something in her air fryer. So I started asking her about it, and she has the kind that's like a bucket, like it looks more like a coffee maker or something with a little bucket that pulls out. So she said, but I think I would rather have the toaster oven kind. And I'm like, I have that. I have the toaster oven with the air fryer. I've never used it. I don't know how to use it. What do I do? So she's like, it's so easy. Just throw your food in, turn it on, and that's it. Like it really can't get any easier. It's like making toast. I mean, there's really only one way to do it and it doesn't go wrong. So I came home, I went through the freezer, found some frozen food. I think I had some like chicken tender strips or something like that, threw them in and like just stared at it and waited. And 7 or 10 minutes later, we had amazing chicken strips. Like I had no idea how yummy, how quick, it was so much easier. There wasn't the cleanup that, like frying in a pan or cooking in a pan would be. And I just started air frying everything. So later that night, I threw because she mentioned making some baked goods. And I think I saw on one of these infomercials like cinnamon rolls. I had a pack of Pillsbury cinnamon rolls in the fridge, busted that baby out, put my cinnamon rolls in my little tray with parchment paper, threw them in there. Amazing, delicious. They were crispy on the outside, a little bit gooey on the inside, which is how I like them. So it was perfect. I had no idea what I was missing. I mean, I guess I knew what I was missing, but when you know you're missing something because you don't have access to it, that's one thing. Like, I'm missing the joy of seeing kangaroos in my yard, but I don't live in Australia, so I don't get to see kangaroos. That's just my life, right? I had this freaking air fryer in my kitchen all this time. I just never used it. I never turned it on. I never made an attempt. So that's even, more ridiculous. So then the next day, my son asked for a grilled cheese sandwich, and I'm like, hold on. I've got the perfect solution for this. I'm going to do it in the air fryer. Now, I should preface all of this by saying I do not cook. I am not proficient in the kitchen. I do make 2 meals a year. I make Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners. Well, from scratch is probably not accurate. I do make everything. I make the turkey from scratch. The turkey turns out very well. The other stuff may or may not be various versions of like Costco refrigerated items, pre-cooked that I just have to warm up, boxed stuffing. What is that? What is it called? Stovetop stuffing, like those kind of things. So really, I am not a cook. That's the point here. So I try not to get too creative because it generally does not work out well. But my husband or my son said he wanted grilled cheese. I thought, how hard could this be? You throw the bread and the cheese in the air fryer. You don't need all the oils and all that stuff. So I basically put in dry bread with a slice of cheese and burnt burnt it to hell. Like it didn't work that first time. But then I figured out, okay, well, like a regular frying pan, you need butter, right? So that was the magic ingredient. It turns out you do need butter when you are air frying a grilled cheese sandwich. So the next time I put butter on the bread and it was amazing. It melted beautifully. The cheese was perfect. The sides were just crisp and buttery, salty, delicious without being like burnt. There was no mess. It was wonderful. So since then, whenever I have a chance, and like I said, it's only been a couple weeks, but I have been making all this stuff that I generally would have put in the microwave or we would have just not eaten, that would sit in the freezer for 6 months and then finally get thrown away. I've been buying taquitos and frozen French fries. We got the big old yummy seasoned steak fries, and put just like 10 in the little basket, throw it in there for, I don't know, 12 minutes, flip them halfway. It is amazing. I wish I had paid attention 2 years ago when people were talking about this and how they wanted one and how easy it was and how delicious. So, these are the things that fascinate and amuse me, and I'm excited to have learned. So if you don't have an air fryer, consider getting one if you like frozen foods or things that, well, I guess really anything that would go in the oven could probably go in the air fryer. I did find a recipe for cupcakes and I thought, okay, well, this is interesting. So I tried to make these little blueberry muffins from a mix that I really like. And those did not work out. Maybe if I play around with the timing, I could figure it out. But the top the top of the muffin was getting kind of brown, and I don't really like anything burnt. So the top was getting a little bit too golden brown, and the inside was still gooey, like still fully liquid batter. So I ended up throwing them in the microwave just to like stiffen up that batter, and I just ate them kind of raw because I like that. But I don't recommend it. So I haven't quite figured out how to do like deep baked things. But I'm sure that there are recipes specifically for that, and I'll just have to keep looking. But certainly for the cheese sticks and breakfast sandwiches and grilled cheese, or the frozen potato-y kind of things, hash browns or potato wedges, probably pizza pockets. I don't know. I haven't tried those, but definitely recommend if you haven't tried it yet. Okay. So next thing that I want to talk about that is always fun for me, because as we have shared in the past, I am obsessed with TV. I'm watching a new show called The Glory. So it is on Netflix, and it is a Korean drama, which usually I don't love the shows that are subtitled or dubbed, because I don't usually have like my full attention on the TV. I talk about it a lot. It's always on in the background, but I'm usually doing other stuff. I'm usually on my laptop doing some kind of work. And so I'm just sort of like half listening and glancing at the TV now and then. So I really need to be able to understand the spoken words. This show, The Glory, it's spoken in English, and it's good English. So it's easy to follow. And it's fairly violent for a drama. And I think that this is true for a lot of these Korean shows, from what I've been told. Bullying is a very common thread, theme. And in this show, it's about a girl who, when she was in like middle school, young-ish, she was bullied pretty violently by a group of kids at her school. And then even like adults in her life, like the teachers, administrators at the school, were pretty violent with her. And I guess that's part of the culture. I don't know if it is today, but it was at least portrayed in this show. So it's a little bit hard to watch if you're not used to seeing that. And so I certainly, don't recommend it for everybody, but it's pretty interesting. And if you want to like branch out into a little bit more international television, I would recommend The Glory. I think there's 16 episodes. I'm probably on 14 right now, so I'm getting close to the end, and I'm a little bit sad that it's coming to an end, but I'm curious to see how it does end. And I've been told that there's a couple others that I should check out after. So I'll keep you posted and let you know how that goes, and if it's something that I would, if I find another show that I would recommend, because it's a whole new area for me. I mentioned, I watched Squid Games, and I watched the physical 100, whatever. So it's been kind of fun. Okay. We are just about out of time for today. I'm so glad that you were able to hang out with me today. It's always fun, and I'm really looking forward to sharing more random musings with you next week. Until then, I hope I've inspired you to be a super doer yourself. So goodbye from your host and resident super doer, Chris Kendall. And now go do something.
Thanks for tuning into Musings of a Super Doer with Christina Kendall. We hope you've enjoyed today's show and look forward to having you back next week. Until then, have a beautiful week.